Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 10 of the East Pittsburgh Fitness Podcast. I am your host, Jeremiah Rowe, head strength coach at Case Specific Wellness and Case Specific Athletics here in Plum, Pennsylvania. We specialize in individualized sports performance and personal training for everyone from the average Joe to elite athletes. You can learn more about that at www.casespecificwellness.com. Episode 10, I can't believe it. It's only taken me an equal 10 months to get that far, which is pathetic, but we're going to try to get better with that, I promise. Today's show is brought to you by Case Specific Nutrition. CSN, as we like to call it, is the OG of the Case Specific brand name. It's no coincidence that brand that continues to expand today. CSN now has 6 offices around the Pittsburgh area and works with clients from anywhere and everywhere, including Australia, Germany, Canada, and all over the U.S. And the use of that name isn't ironic either. The dietitians from Case Specific Nutrition take an extremely personalized approach to your nutrition, and they always ensure that the plan they create for you is made for you, case specifically. They work with clients of any condition, consideration, and nutrition goal, and best of all, they can bill for most insurances, so you could possibly meet with one of the dietitians for in-person or virtual for next to nothing out of pocket. To get more information or to schedule a consult with one of them, you can head over to casespecificnutrition.com or email us at admin@casespecificnutrition.com. Now, with all of that sponsor nonsense in mind, I would like to introduce today's guest. I'll preface it by saying that he's not here just because he gave me a job and not because he signs my paychecks, but he is the man at the forefront of the Case Specific empire, Mr. Andrew M. Wade.
How you doing, man?
Good, man. How are you?
Doing well. We're also with my Rottweilers. We gotta let them know, because inevitably Apollo or Axel is going to shake their head or scratch their ear or pant very loudly or potentially snore.
They might start wrestling.
That also could happen.
Just out of nowhere. If you hear like a bear fight in the background or that pawing that you just heard right there, that would be 2 bear-sized Rottweilers going at it.
Yeah, we're in the office. They tend to be pretty chill here, but they definitely are dogs, and we got to give them their appropriate shout-out. Hopefully they'd learn a lot today.
I mean, people know your dogs, and so they're going to be happy to know that they were essentially also guests on this podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
Apollo's staring at me right now, asking when he's going to be asked a question. So.
He wants pets. I see him.
He's pawing at the desk. I just said.
Come here, bud.
No, nothing. Okay.
Okay. He's going to get pets later.
He's gonna
Onward.
All right. So, what we have, guys, is going to be, we're going to do our best to put a couple of podcasts together with Andrew here. And we'll have more than one to release. Today, we wanted to just take one to kind of address some general, basic nutrition ideas, really general topics. And we will slowly be making our way into some more in-depth / brand-specific podcast subjects. So, what I want to kind of start today off with is I have the man at the front of a nutrition empire, or wellness empire, really we can call it now.
In the making.
We have the nutrition side that's well established. We have the wellness side that I am trying my best to make well established.
It's growing. It's getting bigger and bigger. It's doing good stuff.
We have the meal prep side now. So not only, we're really just trying to control everything that you guys eat, honestly. Like, your entire nutrition life is based on Case Specific. So you're welcome for that.
One-stop shop.
One-stop shop. That's it. But as a personal trainer, as a strength coach, there's one thing that's always going to come up for me, and I'm sure everyone listening to this has experienced it at some point. Someone's going to come up to me and say, I'm trying to lose this fat here, or my legs, my stomach, wherever, my arms. Why can't I lose this fat? And so, Andrew, who has helped me lose fat multiple times, whether that's getting ready for stage or just helping, hundreds and thousands of people at this point.
We're definitely in the thousands.
With completely changing their life as far as their body composition. He's a man to talk to about this. So, Andrew, someone comes to you and says, hey, I want to lose this fat around my waist. I can't seem to get it to go away. What do I need to do, or what am I doing wrong? And Andrew likes to talk, so we're just going to let him roll with this one.
Just let me roll. I love it. Well, so first things first, it's the age-old comment. You can't spot treat. Anybody that claims that they can help you spot treat, any supplements that claim that they can do that is a flat-out lie. We have to remember that your body fat, while our society tries to make it this like terrible, criminal, awful thing, it is an organ. It's actually one of your main organs, and it is a hormonally active organ in your body. And so your body utilizes it for a variety of reasons. And there's a reason why genetically body fat sits in certain places. It's not with aesthetics in mind. It's with space, right? Your abdomen is, for example, where your peritoneal cavity is. There's a lot of space there. There's a lot of room, and it doesn't impede your mobility quite as much as on your legs or your arms might. And from there, we have sort of that genetic diversity of those android versus gynoid individuals, which just kind of says where our body fat tends to sit. But most importantly, there is essential body fat, right? When you step on stage for a bodybuilding show, we've depleted somebody so lean that they're beyond their essential body fat. We've depleted their essential fat stores that allow their testosterone levels to exist, that allow their body to really flourish, energy levels, muscle recovery, I mean, you name it. Body fat is actually a big role player in that. Having adequate body fat helps that. And contrary to what most people understand, some of our essential body fat is under our skin. So when you see someone on the front of a magazine or in a bodybuilding show that has absolutely the look of no body fat whatsoever, that is not a long-term look. There are genetic exceptions to that, but that is just that. It's an exception. Most of us do have some body fat that's going to be under our skin. And unfortunately, we don't have a ton of control how it comes off. I always like to reference Shrek, right? Body fat's like an onion. It comes off in layers. And it's very true. And I can prove it to you by showing any person that I work with when I do a 7-point skin fold, right? We measure their chest and their tricep and their back and their abdomen and their hip and their mid-axillary, their rib cage, and then their leg. And it comes off 1 or 2 millimeters at a time across all the sites. And you get the people all the time that are like, it's not coming off my abdomen. Well, typically if I measure someone the first time and their triceps a 10 and their abdomen's a 30 and the tricep goes to a 9 and the abdomen goes to a 27, they actually went off equally. They both were a 10% reduction. The problem is it's still a 27, so you don't see it as much, right? There's more there. And so it comes off in layers, and there is also going to be a certain amount of body fat that your body's going to need to have long term, right? What's the first thing we do after you win a show? We reverse diet you up. Yeah, binging, yeah. We reverse diet you up, right? We get that calorie in, we get your body fat back to a good level. Your body doesn't recover. I mean, how many years now have you, the month before you're in a show, energy's gone, strength gone, I mean, motivation, mood, all of it on edge. And that's because you're malnourished. And so we got to get you back up to that 6 or 8% so your body can actually function. So it's obviously a long-winded answer, but it's an important one for people to understand because spot treating can't really take place. We don't have that control. But more importantly, there's certain body fat that we actually should be happy that we have, and it does more for us than most of us realize.
Absolutely. And that's no joke, guys. Whenever he talks about, you seeing the person on the magazine that just, has that ideal image that we create in our minds of what a person should look like, how unsustainable that really is. Because, we can use myself as, or I can use myself as a case study for that. When he tells you that, your energy levels that week before the show and everything is shut down, that's no joke. I mean, I am miserable and angry and moody and sleepy at all times. And it's even if it was sustainable, it's not a state of mind or of mood that you would ever want to maintain.
You're not thriving, right?
No,
that's not a
you're
thriving
running
environment.
So far reality and what you really want to be. And so it's something that's really good to keep in mind because we live in a world that is plagued by severe body dysmorphia. Where even for myself, I can speak where when I'm not looking lean like I should, like I will on stage, I look at myself in the mirror and I say, man, I'm getting fat. I gotta cut back on the French fries. But it's really like my body sits where it sits right now and where I'm at right now very comfortably. And it's not what I want to look like, but it's a very healthy place for my body to be, where I'm not holding excess body fat, but I'm also energetic and not suffering and starving myself at all the time.
Yeah, which means your hormones are going to be in a good place. Your body's going to last longer. And that's, I think, the big distinction, right, is we have a disconnected view of health. There's definitely, you're chilling at what we'll say 10 to 12% body fat right now as a fit guy that exercises. So you still look fit, you look athletic, but there is body fat. But that body fat's doing a lot for you. It's the reason you're recovering faster. It's the reason your energy exists. It's the reason your metabolism exists. Hair, skin, and nails growing thicker and longer, liver functioning properly. I mean, you name it. That is actually the image of health. And then for the magazines and for bodybuilding shows, we sail right past it. I always say, you see the guy on the front of the magazine with the ripped 8-pack, and you don't know that he took a bunch of over-the-counter medically prescribed diuretics and probably hasn't peed in 2 days because he's so dehydrated. And it's like, that's not actually health. We've started to miss the point.
Hashtag health.
Yeah, exactly. And so our perception or that disconnect between health and between aesthetic extremes is just that. And for those that are interested in pursuing aesthetic extremes, I'm supportive of that if that's what you want to do, but make sure you understand what that is and make sure you truly understand that that is not the image of health. That's far from it, which is why nobody stays down there. And yeah, you do see the occasional professional athlete that's absolutely shredded, but that's as a side effect of them exercising and training 8 hours a day. Their body has no choice but to be that lean because of their metabolic setup. And to do that doesn't mean they're going to live longer, right? When was the last time you heard a professional athlete that lived to be 100?
Right.
It doesn't happen. They're not in it for the longevity.
50s and 60s.
And 70s maybe, right? And so it just goes back to the idea that athleticism, sport is awesome. It's fun. I'm a sports dietitian. I love working with athletes. But if your goal is to maximize your lifespan and your body, there's a point at which there's a such thing as too little body fat. And I'm happy we're actually talking about that because it needs to be reinforced more often.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like to have the discussion with you just so as a reminder to me because like I said, we have all this body dysmorphia everywhere and I'm as much of a victim of it as anyone else. And I know better. So it is a problem, but now you don't have to be mortified by the little bit of fat that you see sitting on your sides and on your stomach. It's supposed to be there. It's helping you. It's making you a happy, healthy person. Moving on from that, though, we're kind of branching from that. I talked about this a little bit with your lovely wife, Allison, who gave me the pleasure of her presence on this podcast a couple months ago. We got to live up to the hype now. This is my most downloaded show, so we got to beat it now.
Oh, of course. Absolutely.
But her and I discussed this a little bit. And I want to get your thoughts / facts on nutrition as it pertains to exercise.
Everything she said was wrong. I'm just kidding. She's very, very knowledgeable. Hi, Allison. Love you, babe. You did great. You had some good knowledge on there, dropping some bombs.
But we're gonna drop some more bombs.
Hey,
we're gonna drop the atomic bombs of knowledge here. 2 of them. All right, that's probably too soon. But let's talk nutrition and exercise. So we've talked about how body fat is beneficial and that for just general aesthetics. But obviously we know there's other goals outside of just aesthetics with athletic performance or just general health and wellness, just general strength for everyday life. How much does our nutrition affect our ability to get stronger and build muscle in the gym?
I mean, you and I have talked about this before, and it's they always say like your diet's 80% of it, but when it comes to performance and progress, I think the comment would be it's kind of a nice even split, right? I always like to say that performance and progress is 1 part tear, 1 part repair, and the tear is literally all exercise, right? Exercise tears your muscles. It exposes muscles to mild traumas, micro tears, right? I'm not saying go out and actually tear your hamstring and get surgery, but when you exercise, yeah, exactly. When you exercise, if you're in the gym lifting weights, if you're out doing a jog, when you feel fatigue, when you feel muscle soreness, that's because your muscles were basically putting up with whatever resistance you were exposing them to, and they tore slightly, and then in those 48 hours that follow, our inflammatory phase ensues. And that inflammatory phase takes that torn muscle and secretes hormones, GLUT4, a couple others, that pull carbohydrates and pull protein and pull water into the muscle. And then the muscle gets swollen. And the carbohydrate acts as the fuel, and it breaks down the protein and reforms it and helps build it into new muscle tissue, essentially. And then the muscle feels kind of tight or stiff, a day or so later, and that's because there's been some scar tissue surrounding it, almost like scaffolding on a building, right? We put scaffolding on our muscles to protect them or freeze them in place while we kind of build them back up, while we repair the wall that they are, so to speak. And then the muscle's ready to go again, and we expose it to a tear, and then we repair. A lot of people fall victim to the tear and tear, right? Which is they exercise all the time, don't allow time for repair, and your muscles are never going to grow. So what ends up happening is you end up accidentally creating long, lean endurance tissue like a marathoner, right? Think about marathon runners. They aren't muscular, they aren't toned, they aren't fit, and it's because they tear and tear and tear. And so what those muscles do is instead of growing back bigger and stronger, they become more elastic. They become longer and stretchier like a rubber band. So they don't have that same dense aesthetic look, but they're resilient. But if your goal is to tone or to tighten or to build muscle, you need to make sure you tear, and then you need to give that adequate time to repair. I always like to tell people that professional bodybuilders, like those big 300-pound ox-built dudes that step on stage and use all the steroids and all that.
Like me.
Yeah, definitely. Just like Jeremiah right now. The people that are two Jeremiahs, they train 4 days a week. They lift weights 4 days a week. They even subscribe to 1 part tear, 1 part repair. And it's because that repair is when the growth happens. And in that repair, the more you eat, the more carbohydrates you put into the muscle, the more protein you spread across the day to keep a steady stream of amino acids in the bloodstream, so those muscles have them ready to go to lay bricks in that muscle whenever they need to, the bigger the muscle is going to be. And it's funny because the more you repair, the bigger the muscle, not necessarily the more you tear.
Right, yeah. And that recovery is such an important part of it. Now, we know that, like you said, just repeatedly beating that muscle down is not helping in general without the time to repair it. But I think that, like we said, aesthetics play such a significant role in our society now that not only are people over-exercising because they're trying to build that muscle and look better, but they're under-eating at the same time. Again, because we have that stigma or that fear of body fat. And if I eat too much, I'm going to get fat, so I don't want to eat too much. But transitioning to this point, we know that our food intake is highly correlated, or not even correlated, highly cause and effect with muscle growth and muscle building. So let's talk about a little bit about the process of what that food that we consume does for that muscle that we're trying to build. Yeah.
And honestly, I'm happy what you just said. I think I want to flag a quick point before it leaves my brain. When you have exactly the dynamic you said, which is people beating their muscles up, trying to get stronger, and then starving themselves, trying to get leaner, you really end up with a mismatch because your body burns calories every day for your heart to beat, your brain to think, your nerves to function. For you to sit in a room that's 68 degrees, your temperature is 98.6. That 30 degrees of heat output is your metabolism. Your body's burning all the time. And when you shortchange that, there's no world that the body's going to choose to add more cells that then burn more calories when it's being told that there's a deprivation at hand, right? And so it is really important that we're adequately fueling, but exactly what you said before, and this is what's really interesting, and this is something to think about, going back to those athletes that I mentioned, right, before, where they're exercising 6 and 8 hours, they're training, they're doing all their different things. None of them are obese, right? I mean, obviously, like front linemen and all that kind of stuff. But let's take an easy athlete off the top of my head. You guessed him, LeBron James, right? Like super fit, super athletic individual, very, very lean. He's not lean because he undereats. He overfuels. He makes sure that there's no chance of a deficit, because if there's a deficit, he hits the floor. And now, sure, we could try and say like, oh, he's just lean because of his genetics. No, what happens, and this is important, I said earlier that there's hormones that get secreted by your muscles, and this is an important dynamic. When you eat food, the signaling of where that food goes is dependent on your mobility. So if you're a sedentary person and you don't move, your fat stores, your fat cells, like I said, they're a hormonally active organ. They actually direct traffic. They say, send that to the muscles, send that to the liver, send that to the brain, put that in reserves with me. The fat stores direct traffic. When you exercise, if you get out of breath, if you get huffing and puffing, you fatigue those muscles, the muscles secrete GLUT4 amongst a couple other hormones that override the fat stores and basically direct traffic for about 36 hours. And those muscles say, bring that here, put that there, send that to the brain. But what ends up happening is instead of the fat stores directing things to conserve and store, the muscles signal it to burn, which is part of the reason why when you are an athlete, or if you're someone who is utilizing fitness as a part of your body composition change, you need to make sure you're fueling. That's why people get leaner by eating more, is because their muscles are literally telling their body, burn, baby, burn. And just like when you eat less, your body learns to burn less, right? Hair slows down, fingernails get brittle. The body figures out ways to use less calories. If you exercise and then you eat more, your body burns more. They've even done studies where they had people that they were trying to get them to gain 60 pounds in a 6-month span, and they fed them the caloric surplus that they expected would lead to a 60-pound weight gain. And after 6 months, the average weight gain was under 10 pounds. And it's because the metabolism adjusted up with the food excess. It started doing things with it, and the presence of physical activity allows that, or further encourages that. So for those of you out there that exercise, remember that your muscles are literally telling your body to burn, to utilize fuel. And then when you undereat and you shortchange your muscles, it actually puts your body into a suppressed mode, because now the body thinks that you're exercising, exposing your body to trauma, which means it's trying to escape from a tiger that's chasing you, and you have no access to food. So now your body's in a literal survival mode, and you're giving it the wrong information. Cortisol levels spike, inflammatory markers spike, the muscles start to get sore and achy, energy levels start to crash, your body starts to run out of gas. We've got to make sure that fueling you allows that exercise to take place, and over time that combination will create the more fit you. And it's not going to be the 30-day challenge that a beach body is going to try and sell you on. It's not going to be that immediate change where all of a sudden you're lighter. Our body changes over time, but it's going to be a more sustainable change. You're going to increasingly get more fit, you're going to be healthier, you're going to get leaner, but it's going to be a side effect of doing things that feel good, which is really the more important part. And at the end of the day, if your goal is truly to be healthy and fit, why not set yourself up to level that up month in, month out, year in, year out, and actually commit to it for a lifetime, as opposed to just doing something for 4 weeks out of some random sweeping notion.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point that you make there too, that it's a more consistent and sustainable mindset. Like we talked about those elite athletes who aren't living to be 100 years old that are super lean right now. But that person who just consistently exercises every day and eats healthy but feeds themselves, that's that person that's going to see a nice, long, healthy lifespan.
Yep.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Good talk there. I hope you guys are taking notes on all this, because this is super important, especially for those of you who like to starve yourself because you want to be skinnier. Now, as I stand here or sit here in this chair, looking at my Truly on the desk, I
had to have a little liquid courage.
Yeah,
it's okay,
yeah.
man.
I was a little afraid to talk to you guys, so I want to bust out the liquid courage here. Obviously, I think a pretty substantial population segment of who listens to my podcast can be described as a pretty young group. And a lot of my friends that listen to it out of college, still in college, whatever. Alcohol is a big part of life. We know that. I want to address this with you because this is interesting, actually. Because when I started college, I hardly ever drank at all. And it was actually like a complete scare that I was going to shut down my muscle growth if I drank. Like alcohol equals your protein synthesis and muscle building shut down. And so I don't know if I drank once my entire freshman year of college, and very rarely during my sophomore year. But I think that's just something that people are going to really take a lot away from. Let's talk about alcohol as it relates to that muscle growth and exercise.
Ooh, this is fun. Do you want to put your nerd hat on?
I already got it on.
Okay, everybody listening, put your nerd hats on because I'm gonna dive in. So everybody listening has probably said one of two things in their life about alcohol. They've probably said that they are intoxicated, or they've said that they hurt their liver, or they put their liver to work, or their liver is metabolizing alcohol. Those are all like random phrases that our culture says and doesn't actually know what they're saying when they say it. So alcohol is actually the fourth macronutrient. Carbs, fats, and proteins are our three macronutrients. What that means, our body can utilize them as fuel. It can burn them as gas in the gas tank. It can be the fuel that makes you 98.6 degrees in a 68 degree room. Alcohol can also be burned that way. And it goes through the same process in the liver. It metabolizes through your metabolism, just like carbs, fat, and protein. The difference is when we are breaking down alcohol, it turns into acetone, which is a toxin, aka intoxicated. And when acetone, the toxin, is in our bloodstream, we are a little loopy. We get kind of thrown off. Our brain stops working as well. And that ends up having to go through the Krebs cycle in your liver in place of carbs, fat, and protein, which are acetyl-CoA. They get broken down to acetyl-CoA. Alcohol becomes acetone. Those two things go into the Krebs cycle and make ATP. ATP is the energy that our cells use that allow us to exist. The reason you are listening to this, the reason I am ranting and rambling, is because our bodies are fueling with ATP. Jeremiah is currently fueled by acetone. I am currently fueled by acetyl-CoA, which is why I'm so much smarter than him. Boom. Done, explained.
All right, podcast over.
Yeah, mic drop. But so with that, the reason that that's a relevant explanation and conversation is because what you could probably imagine or ascertain is that alcohol is not quite as efficient or effective in terms of fueling you, right? So while your body will resort to using it, it will break it down, it will turn it into energy. While it's using it and burning it as energy, you are intoxicated. You are utilizing a toxin as your fuel source. Nothing is going to go as well as it should, which means muscles that are being torn apart are not going to repair as well. Alcohol is not going to appropriately affect insulin and GLUT4 and lead to appropriate delivery of carbohydrates and water and protein to the muscle, because alcohol inhibits antidiuretic hormone, which completely upsets your water balance and sends water out of the muscle. It also affects your insulin sensitivity and often leads to low blood sugar, which means the carbs are not necessarily going into the muscle tissue. And once again, because that alcohol is being used as fuel, your body's not using carbohydrates as energy, it's using alcohol, which means it's more likely to store those in the moment. And so what ends up happening is, instead of having your normal system, which is this efficient process of hormones telling the body to put good things in the muscles and allow them to repair, alcohol is saying, hold my beer, literally, and ruining the entire situation. And so alcohol does impair recovery. It prevents the muscles from properly doing what they're going to do. Alcohol abuse can obviously lead to, muscle atrophy. And for anybody that's ever known someone who drinks a lot, they tend to look very swollen. And it's because the water that is supposed to be in their cells is out of their cells, which means the attempt for a muscle to contract, which requires almost an electrical conduction, can't happen because the water that it's supposed to conduct through is not present for the actual event, which is why the day after drinking, your muscles end up misfiring and you're weaker, and they end up sometimes being crampy. and you're not going to be as strong. Right? You're not going to drink up one night and then wake up the next day and hit a PR. It's just not how it works. And that's why all of those hangover cures are always loading full of electrolytes and fluids to try and get your water balance back on track. But until that acetone is out of your system, you are running on not even an alternative fuel, like a required, like non-exciting fuel. It's like you go to the gas station and there's the gas and then there's ethanol, but like you go into the gas station and you buy corn oil and just pour that into your car. That's essentially the level of fuel you're letting your body run on.
I love it. I love it.
Nerd hat off. Obviously, alcohol can be fun in moderation. Everyone knows that they process a drink about every hour, right? That is the rate at which your liver and muscles metabolize alcohol from acetone to ATP. And so, obviously, when you have a little bit, it's not as big of a deal. But those big college or young person drinking nights are definitely a big setback in the muscle growth world, the physical recovery world. And I know for myself, now that I'm approaching that big 3-0, a lot of my friends that are my age notice that if they have a big night on a Saturday, they're still not really feeling their best on like a Tuesday. And it's because the body really does have to process things. Alcohol ends up getting out of the system slowly, and it fatigues and depletes things. And so as you get older, you'll start to notice that you don't seem to bounce back as quickly. And alcohol can affect you for up to 72 hours.
That's fun. I'm going to go drink a gallon of water now. For this, 8 ounces of alcohol that I had? 12.
Well, luckily...
it's 12. Yeah. Oh, man, I'm dead.
It's 5% by volume, which means there's one drink in there. And so we've been on this podcast for a half hour. You're pretty much already done with it. So
I'm still going to slug some water. All right, well, we're getting near the end here. We've talked a lot of nerdy nutrition and exercise topics, so I'm going to finish it off with something a little bit more fun. For those of you who don't know Andrew, he is an avid travel enthusiast. This dude's been to more countries by the time he was 25 than I could dream to get to in my life. And so just a quick, relatively rapid fire question and answer. Favorite country that you travel to and favorite country that you would like to travel to and why?
Favorite country that I've traveled to is one of my least favorite questions because it's so hard. But I think that I will say, oh, that's so hard.
I wouldn't even say country. Just favorite place. Maybe favorite even landmark.
Okay, that makes things a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Definitely helps a little bit. The reason I struggle with it so much is because there's countries I've been to that are more city focused, and I feel like I could live there. And then there's countries I visited where it's been more like recreation and hiking and site based, and like it's not something I necessarily would want to go back to. I think the most impactful one for me, and it was really early on, was going to Egypt and seeing the Great Pyramids. That was probably... It was my first time in a non-developed nation, seeing true poverty, and it was also one of the first world wonders, right? And so it was the first world wonder I saw. That trip probably opened my eyes to the idea of travel, made me want to figure out a way to become successful so that I could do a lot of good in the world and give back in a big way. So that was probably the trip that resonated. Now I've done things since then that are awesome, that I absolutely love. I mean, Allison and I, as you know, we did that safari and climbed Kilimanjaro last year, which
didn't make it to the top, by the way.
Yeah.
Why was that?
Because I started vomiting uncontrollably about an hour from the top, and they made me turn around because they thought I was going to get sick or be dangerously ill. So we were an hour from the top. It was super sad. Thanks for bringing that up.
I'm sorry.
It's all good. It's all good. It's fine. No big deal.
It's not a sore spot at all.
No, absolutely not. I'm going to go cry now.
Altitude sickness is very real.
It is very real, even for somebody that has very, very good lungs and runs very well. So yeah, it's definitely crazy. But, that trip was absolutely incredible to go on a safari with my wife and get to see all the wild animals and everything. And then my buddies and I, when we did our trip to Ecuador and we stayed with that tribe in the Amazon, the Ashwar tribe, and then went to the Galapagos Islands, those two trips were probably my favorite trips. But Egypt was probably the most impactful one. And then you asked me, where do I want to go?
Yeah.
Well, I'm really at a point now where I've covered pretty much all of South America and I've hit almost all of Europe. I've just started to graze Asia and Africa. I would like to go to Australia, New Zealand, and Tasmania. That's a big one on my list. But secretly, my biggest yearning one is actually to go to Antarctica. I want to do a tour that leaves off of the southern tip of Argentina, and the National Geographic ship, which when we were in the Galapagos Islands was actually docked there. You can actually board it and be on it, and then you go do a cruise down the archipelago into central Antarctica. That's probably where I'm personally, if I was able to just go anywhere for free, I think that's the one I'd try and sneak in.
Ooh, Antarctica. How many people would you guys ask where they want to travel the most would say Antarctica? That's ridiculous, but I love it. That's why we love Andrew. Well, hey, that was a fantastic show. Andrew, where can people find you at to learn more from you?
Yes, well, case-specific nutrition is probably the easiest. So all things case-specific nutrition, Facebook, Instagram, our casespecificnutrition.com website. Those are probably where you're going to see the blogs, the content, all of that. I do run the CSN 3M, Case-Specific Nutrition 3M, Mindsets, Myth-Busting, and Mentoring podcast, which I do one every week.
He does better than me.
I am on episode 48. I've done one every week for 48 weeks. It is the Mindset Monday podcast. They're usually 10 to 15 minutes long. Just a cool observation or educational opportunity in the world of health and wellness. So if you check that out, iTunes, Spotify, that's available. And then my most active personal social media is Instagram, and I am Pittsburgh Guyatician, Guya, because we are a pretty rare breed in the world.
True. It's true. He stands out. Follow him on Instagram if you want, or like pictures of Rottweilers, because it's usually what I see on there is just the Sunday evening Rottweiler post.
Yeah.
And
it's either that or travel. It's like if I'm somewhere in the world and I'm taking photos, or I'm chilling out with my big Rotties, snuggling up on the ground.
Yeah, that's pretty much the way it goes. That's the dream. Well, thank you all for listening to the first double-digit episode of East Pittsburgh Fitness Podcast. I almost said CSN 3M.
It's a great podcast. You should definitely see it.
It's a great podcast. Go check it out for sure. It's sweet. I know the guy that runs it. He's a cool dude. But hey, check in, and hopefully we said we should be good for 2 weeks from now, because you and I will have recorded our next one. Andrew will be my guest on the next podcast as well. And we will be discussing more things specific to case-specific athletics.
We're going to interview you a little bit. We're going to switch driver's seats. I'm going to guest host a bit, I think.
How the turntables.
Yes.
Well, guys, check that out in 2 weeks. And until then, thank you for tuning in to the East Pittsburgh Fitness Podcast. And we will talk to you guys soon.